I'm going to go through 5 things the military taught me that I can carry over now into my business. But before we get into that, I need a little bit of background. So I spent 5 years in the Royal Marines. Since leaving the Royal Marines, I now help people join, pass courses, that kind of thing in the military through the lens of fitness. The business I own has now worked with thousands of clients. We've had tremendous success over the last couple of years. And the main reason I believe I've been able to do that is due to these 5 lessons I learnt during my time with the Marines. So without further ado, let's hit number 1. Number 1 is attention to detail. So something that is hammered home to you when you're in the Corps, certainly during training, during the foundation phase, is attention to detail. You will have countless inspections, you will not be able to meet the grade, regardless of what you do, you'll be penalised, etc. So it trains you to have a really, really fine eye on what actually looks good and is passable. It raises your standards to look for the little things that make the difference. Obviously, an inspection in a locker is not a massive thing. It's not a hugely important thing, but it's a metaphor almost for what you're going to do later on down the line. So in a military context, that would be packing your kit to go in the field properly, making sure you don't miss key weapon answers, even making sure your safety catches turn back to safety after you've been in a firefight. These kind of little details that obviously are important down the line are enforced by these little inspections you have at the start of training. Taking that into business has been hugely beneficial because I just believe it's something that elevates you above the competition if they're not willing to sweat the small stuff. Number 2 is the importance of community. So within the military, it's pretty much a given that you do things in a group. You cannot get through Royal Marines training, you cannot get through a deployment, a training exercise, whatever, by yourself. There's just too much to do. There's too many jobs to go round. You know, you've got to, for example, in a field context, you'd have one person on sentry, you'd have one person sleeping, someone walking the harbour, those kinds of, there's loads of jobs to do. You could not do it on your own. In the field, you work in shifts. On camp, in training, for starters, you would share block jobs. So you'd share who cleans the bathrooms, who cleans the rooms, whatever else it is. If you were to distill it all down and try and go by yourself, it would just be impossible. And it's made that way on purpose, to reinforce the importance of team. Now, something I've been incredibly fortunate to do over the last 12 months with my business is actually build and create a little bit of a team. So from a coaching perspective, we now have a team of people who can share the workload, share the jobs, and make sure that the product is delivered in the best way possible. And from a client perspective, we've instated a little bit of community in terms of live events, community group calls on Zoom, whatever it may be, to make sure that there is some level of community within the group. Again, because it's so heavily emphasized during Royal Marines training that you need the group, the collective, to come together to achieve the shared aim. Number 3 actually takes us back a little bit, and that's having a strong why. So I didn't really realize I was doing this when I joined the Marines in the first place, but because it's such an arduous process and there's so many challenges to face and there's so many things you're gonna have to overcome, at a certain point you're gonna start to ask yourself, is this right for me? Am I going to quit? Should I hand my notice in? Should I go home? All of these questions, if you don't have a strong reason to be there and reason to say no and reason to go the other way, are probably going to be quite attractive. When you're really, really cold and wet on Dartmoor or whatever, it's pretty attractive to go, yeah, let's go back to camp, be nice and warm, have a nice meal, whatever it is. Whereas if you have something that's stronger within you that you know going through this initial sacrifice, this initial discomfort, is going to get you to something on the other end that is worth it, then you're much more likely to stay the course. The same is true again in business. I couldn't have foreseen this. You know, when I started my business, I thought sunshine and rainbows. However, there are trials and tribulations, there are challenges, there are stresses and strains that get impressed upon you when you have the responsibility of clients and team, etc. And so having a strong enough reason as to why we are doing what we're doing is essential. And it's something I've carried over from the military into what I do now. Because again, if I didn't have that strong enough reason, if I didn't impress that upon my team, then we would all face these challenges and probably retract rather than grow into them and actually move forward. Number 4 is more of a perspective shift than a lesson, but I'm going to include it because I think it's important. So it links back to stress, links back to stress management. During your time in the military, whether it be recruit training, whether it be your actual career itself, you're actually exposed to proper challenge in terms of you're in survival mode. You know, you might be cold, you might be hungry, you might be on your last legs because you've yomped for 12 hours, whatever it is. They're proper challenges, they're proper issues you've got to deal with that are in front of you. You might be in Norway and it's minus 30 degrees and you've got to get warm. That's a proper issue. You've got to dig your shelter to make sure that you're not in the wind anymore. That's a proper problem. Day to day, in my nice warm apartment with my laptop, this and that, I can face challenges, face problems. They're never going to be quite to the level that being in minus 35 degrees in Norway, in the Arctic Circle, without the proper kit is going to present. So it's ultimate perspective, because once you've faced up to proper issues, then these little day-to-day things just become pretty regular and easier to deal with. It's a bit like when people say start your day with the hardest thing, because then comparatively everything down the line is going to be a bit easier. So a cold plunge is a really, really good example. You're going to go and get in a cold plunge because it's challenging at the start of the day, then everything else that the day sort of presents to you is probably not as difficult. It's the same thing, just on a macro scale. So one of the biggest things that Royal Marines training gives you is just exposure to challenge, and therefore perspective for when you go into your unit or later on down the line in your life, that you can handle the challenges that are put in front of you because you've done something worse in the past. The fifth and final lesson then from the military that I've managed to carry over into business and into civilian life is just that the best units and the highest performers within the military just do the basics better than everyone else. So you look at Special Forces, we have the privilege of sometimes within the Marines getting exposed to Special Forces. You look at what those guys do. It's essentially the same stuff as what we were doing. They were just doing it to a higher level. So it's not like they're reinventing the wheel or coming up with these really, really cool, extravagant ways of doing things. It's literally the fact that they do it day in, day out for hours on end, that they can do it with their eyes closed, that they just do the basics really, really, really well. And that, for me, within fitness or within business or within just life in general, counts for so much. And the reason for that is, nowadays, we have so many distractions. There are so many shiny objects that we can look at and grab and think that that's going to be the next answer and whatever else, this new marketing technique or this new coaching app or whatever it may be for business. For the military, it could be anything else. All of those things are likely not going to yield the return you think they are, versus focusing your energy, focusing your efforts on the basic stuff. So from a fitness perspective, that would be training intensity, training frequency, sleep, nutrition, okay? Basic shit, do that stuff well, you're going to be in a good place. From a business perspective, that's the client and customer journey or experience with you, that's the delivery of the product, and that's basic retention. So that's a huge thing to round things off that I take from the military and push into what I do now, is just get rid of all the esoteric, complex, complicated things that you think are important, distill it down into the basics and do those really, really well. Guys, I hope that's helped you. I hope that's painted some sort of a picture in terms of how my brain works and why it works the way it does. And hopefully you've taken something from that. If you have, I'd love you to like, comment, subscribe. If you do want to work with us within our one-to-one coaching, then the link will be below this video. Just go through the application process and I shall be in touch. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you in the next one.